Hey, it's Marquette Redham, and I'm joined with my partner in crime.
Oh my, Paul Redham.
Yeah, that's your name.
I know.
And we're here today for episode 5 of Calls with Paul.
That's right.
And just a brief announcement, we are not going to be here next week doing Calls with Paul because we are going to be in
Disneyland or
World in Florida with our children. So hence we're rocking the Valentine's stuff today. And you should know, I brought my magic heart wand.
And that we have lots of love.
If you act
everybody.
out, the heart wand will whack you.
Oh boy.
So I'm ready.
Well, if you act out, you might get a kiss.
Oh boy. Okay, it's a PG show. Let's keep it rated. So you guys, in honor of Valentine's season and the spirit of love, I thought we would offer some tips to buyers today.
Yeah.
But focusing on how to find a house that you love in 8 easy steps. I think a lot of people, real estate can be stressful, overwhelming. A lot of people have had pretty rotten experiences, and so they come to it and they tell people about their bad real estate experience, and so that tends to sort of influence everyone's impressions.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be awful, does it?
No, absolutely. It shouldn't be awful. It should really be a fun thing, or kind of fun. It's serious, but it should also be a good time. We try to joke around a little bit to bring the stress levels down. Not that we don't take things seriously, but it's, none of this is rocket science, but a lot of times people get really ramped up. It's a big deal. That's really important, but you should be able to have a good time along the way. And you should be able to figure out like what home or condo or townhome, whatever really works for you.
Well, and I think a lot of it also is working with a realtor that has experience to kind of predict what's going to be an issue in your deal and really give you the confidence to know it's taken care of.
Yeah.
Well, before we dive into those 8 easy steps, I'm just going to ask our audience. I see Roger. Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, man.
Give us a thumbs up if you guys can hear everything okay. Or otherwise, let us know if you can't. Hey, Carol, thanks for tuning in. So, yeah, give us a thumbs up if you can hear or if there are any sound issues or anything like that.
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, then let's dive in. Let's talk about step number 1. What's the very first thing someone needs to do to find a house that they love?
Well, I think the very first thing really is to figure out there's what you can afford and then what you're comfortable spending. And I think that a good consult with me can go a long ways, but really you want to talk to a lender so that we can make sure that you don't have any ghosts or goblins. That's a different holiday, isn't it? But,
yeah.
But make sure there aren't any things lurking in your closet. I'm having a hard time
making sure Cupid doesn't bite you in the butt.
There you go. Cupid doesn't bite you in the butt from things that maybe you had nothing even to do with. Sometimes the credit agencies get names mixed up and all kinds of stuff. So you want to make sure we pull your credit. We get you a good consult with a lender.
And that lender also give you a pre-approval letter?
Right. So they'll give us a pre-approval letter, or some of these days are offering approval letters, which run you through underwriting and you can close faster. But you want to make sure that you're squared away there. So if we do find a home that you love, we're ready to really act and act quickly. Most sellers want that letter so that they feel like that you can really perform under the contract that you've submitted.
Well, this is smart. I mean, it's not something I would have thought of because I would have wanted to just go look at pretty houses and probably fall in love with a bunch that I couldn't afford. And so I guess getting that nailed down first is a good idea.
We do that sometimes.
Yeah, we do that sometimes. Okay, so step 1 is to figure out what you can afford and meet with a lender. What's step number 2?
Step number 2 is, we really need to figure out what you want, where you want to be. So we have a price range. And then a lot of times we start talking about neighborhoods in areas and parts of town and just sort of figuring out like what your life is about and where you're headed and what your family needs and what you need as a single person maybe or whatever.
Well, I know that you have always really focused on resale value and making sure people are investing their money smartly. So, to me, I want to be focusing on the pretty aesthetic things, but I guess you also have to figure out your long-term goals first, right? Like
you do.
What's your objective?
Well, yeah, I mean, so a lot of times first-time home buyers come to us and they want to buy a home, and I'm always thinking, gosh, I really want them to turn this into a rental property down the road, because there's never an easier rental property to acquire than the one that you bought as a primary residence and then to move on. The trick becomes a lot of people end up wanting the cash out of the one they have so they can then buy themselves a bigger house. But as a guy that just cares about making people money, I really like it when we think in terms of your first property being a rental property, maybe even your second one, depending on what you're up to.
So imagine if I'm looking to hold something as an investment or a rental property for years to come, that's a very different house than the one I want to just live in with my family intentionally for the next, however many years.
Sure.
Or maybe it's a starter home. I'm going to be jumping off into something else. Okay.
Sure, it can be, and it just depends on what suits you.
So the next step number 3, into finding a house that you love, and that's the part I like. So that's the figuring out what you want, right? Like how many bedrooms and what kind of style and what neighborhood. Tell me a little bit about setting up those criteria for that search.
Yeah, so we do a basic, we figure out how many bedrooms you need, and I try to set them at minimum. So if you want a 4-bedroom, and maybe one of the things is an office, we always want to go a little bit light on that and make it a 3-bedroom so we have margins in your search. There aren't a lot of homes out there in the market right now, so we don't have to really try and narrow all that down. And folks these days are pretty good at going through lots of data anyway and kind of squaring down what they need. But yeah, we come up with some general search criteria. We start running around and eliminating areas and parts of town and kinds of houses. And most of that's done on speed dating for homes.
Can we get to that in a minute?
We can.
So I'm a list maker, right? So if someone wants to come at their home search in a real methodical way, I've read some things, I've heard you talk about having a must-have list. So like number of bedrooms, bathrooms, or is a garage a requirement or a workshop. Then a list of like what you should have. And then a list of like wish lists. Like I'd be super excited if it had X, Y, or Z.
Right.
And then I've also heard you talk about deal breakers. What's a deal breaker?
Well, a deal breaker for everybody, deal breakers are different. But like on the resale side, which is all we really care about, on the resale side, things like backing up to Mopac is probably a deal breaker, or being next to something else that's really unpleasant that you won't be able to change on your own if you live there. And sometimes on resale, if there's a vacant lot next to you, as an example, we had one actually here in Central Austin that was next to a vacant lot where it looked like they were starting construction, which kind of scared me off.
Well, you don't know what they're going to build.
You don't know. It could be a pink elephant for I don't know. I mean, we actually found out what that was, but you just don't know. It's an open variable. So those could be deal breakers on the resale side. On the personal side, it might be, hey man, I have to have a 3-car garage, or hey, I need a single story. I'm tired of climbing steps.
And you help people figure out what that is. Like if they're not really sure, you can guide them through that, right?
We can. A lot of times the needs and the wants kind of get mixed up and jumbled. The needs go into search criteria, and then the wants we find as we go along. And we get really good. I had one guy, I don't know if you remember him or not, but I had one guy that really wanted to hear birds at his front door. And it was surprising to me how hard that was to find in Austin. He didn't want to hear any highway noise, just birds. But that was his want, and it sort of turned into a need over time. But
did you find it?
We did, actually. We did.
What neighborhood do you get to hear birds from your front porch?
Well, oddly, it was in Travis Country down south, and he was, the house had to be a little bit removed and far back in the back. And ultimately, they weren't happy with that because it took a long time to get in and out of the neighborhood over the next few years. So since they've sold it. But, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've met with a lender, we've identified our goals, we've got our basic home shopping criteria, speed dating. How do you help somebody figure out and really quickly get a sense of where they want to be?
Well, yeah, that's really my favorite part.
Surprise.
As you know, so we narrow down your search, based on your price range and area of town you need to be in, all that kind of stuff. And usually at that point you have, maybe 3 different neighborhoods or even 5 or 10 different neighborhoods that may be good fits, and you just need to kind of figure it out. So what we do is we pick, or you pick, or I pick, or whatever, but we pick homes. We try to cap it at 15, although recently I did 20.
Yeah, well, those are people in from out of town from California.
It was a long day, and we had a good time. So we go out and we try to see homes very quickly, with the idea of eliminating homes as we go along. So a lot of people make the mistake of going through homes and wanting to see how it can work for them. And I want you to really think very differently about it, not how it works for you, but how you can eliminate that as a possibility. You'll never hurt my feelings when you say no about a house. And in fact, as we go through the process, our clients get really well trained. Sometimes we eliminate we walk in and they're like, this doesn't work, and we move on. So that allows us to look at homes very quickly.
And you have a ranking, sorry, you guys, I have a little bit of a cold. You have a ranking system that you also recommend to help them kind of keep track?
Yeah, so we play a game in the car called Keep or Crumple.
Keep or crumple?
Yeah, you're allowed to keep 3, and you crumple the rest. And it really stimulates wonderful conversations between spouses. As
well as some wars.
Well, yeah.
Throwing paper at each other?
A little bit, but we know who wins those wars 95% of the time. So Keep or Crumple is a fun game. We try to keep it down to 3, not because I'm the Gestapo or anything, but because over time, when you look at 15 homes, a lot of those will conflate. And then out of those 3, we can go back and revisit them if we need to, or whatever. But after you've looked at 15 homes, you've played Keep or Crumple, you've learned a lot about yourself, and you're really able to either make a decision about something that's on the market right then, or you sit and wait for that right home that you love to come along.
Well, I imagine that criteria also helps us have a conversation more easily about, well, why I put this one as number 1 and why this one's number 3. And you can kind of communicate a little bit easier with whoever you're house shopping with.
Yeah, and it's really nice for me because I could hear those conversations while we're in the car. And then from that, I'm able to figure out curveballs for you, like areas of town that we haven't discovered, or maybe, hey, instead of this, because that's really important to you and this is really important to you, you might consider this that's completely off grid from what we were talking about.
So that's part of what the experience you bring to the table. That's cool. Okay. The other part of finding a home you love, after you've started speed dating, what advice do you have in terms of the next step?
After you find a home that you love after speed dating, well,
expectation setting.
Well, it depends on how much you love it. Like sometimes we do speed dating and people really find something they want. So we go, we figure out, well, what's it worth? And we start down the road of making offers and doing due diligence and all that good stuff.
Well, can we back up? I was trying to get to having people have expectations as they're home hunting. You know, I've gone to you and I've walked into homes and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe people live like this. Like just it can be off-putting sometimes that you walk into a house and it's completely messy, dirty, dishes. No one's ever in their million years cleaned the baseboards, or floor plans are funky. So tell us a little bit about setting your client expectations and what buyers should have in mind when they're going to search for homes. One being what I just mentioned, making sure that you know that not all homes are perfect. Yeah,
going house hunting, you'll see all kinds of different ways that people live, and some of them are pretty off-putting. But some of those are the very best deals, oddly, because they're not staged, they're not well prepared. And that's part of the fun of going out and really doing the speed dating for homes, is that you can uncover homes that have been sitting on the market and didn't go multiple. So you want to make sure that you don't hold sellers' behaviors against the actual home itself, because there can be a really nice home, there can be gold behind homes that are pour to show. In fact, I'm thinking about a hoarder house right now that you and I bought years ago, where we walked in and man, it was awesome. It was cheap, and
you couldn't walk through it. I mean, it was piles. I mean, literally, there were paths from one room to the next, and he had to have dumpsters brought to his house when he was moving to actually have everything cleared out. But if you could look past all of that, you could see the gigantic, beautiful windows. You could see the really cool stacked rock fireplace. You could see the mint condition wood floors. But so many people were walking into that house and going, "Ugh," and walking back out.
They just couldn't see it, but we could. Anyway.
It was a good investment property.
Yeah, but you just never know. So you go through and you really have to imagine what it can be staged and clean and nice, because all that's easy to solve.
Okay, so also being patient, right, is another thing that people need to have their expectations set for.
Yeah, so when we get through doing our speed dating for homes, if you haven't found it, hopefully you've at least sort of figured out some things that you don't like and some things that you do. And then we just wait for the right home to come on the market, or we go hunting for it.
How long does it take? It varies, doesn't it?
Yeah, it depends on every client and how specific what they're really looking for is. If you want a home that comes on once a year, well, you might be waiting a year, and then in a competitive situation when it comes up. But if you're looking for a pretty regular home that shows up all the time, a little bungalow somewhere in like these three neighborhoods, or if you're looking for a family home in a very specific area of Northwest Hills, as an example, it may take you longer for that to wait for that to come up.
And you mentioned competitive. I mean, I think part of it, you've got to be patient and know that it can take a little while, but you also have to be decisive so that when those opportunities do present themselves, you don't drag your feet and potentially lose out on that one-of-a-kind opportunity.
Absolutely. It's slightly less competitive than it was, but I think we'll put a blog post out on this in a little bit. We had, over the last several years, we've been running multiple offers have been happening in almost about half the homes, about 40%. And now they're happening 1 in 5, but they're still happening quite frequently. So you have to be prepared. If you end up falling in love with the home that's going multiple, you need to be ready to rock and roll on it.
Yeah. And I know it can be emotional. When we were finding our home, I fell in love with a lot of houses that we did not end up getting. And I was really sad, and I would be mourning the loss of those homes. So it's emotional. How do you help people understand and work through that emotional attachment that you can develop?
It really depends on whether they're my wife or not.
Okay, well, if they're not your wife, so hopefully you only have one of those. I'm going to grab my heart one.
Oh,
you just have one of those?
Just one, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, tell us.
Well, we just have to talk about perspective and waiting and being patient. Real estate's a funny game. Like, people really end up where they're supposed to be ultimately, even when they lose things that they really love.
I can remember Louise Lane. I really wanted that house on Louise Lane, and now I'm glad we didn't get it.
I am too. And Edwards Mountain.
Oh yeah, that one too. Yeah.
Had a similar steep yard as to what we have, but this is a much better location. It just works out. You just gotta have some faith, and like, your home will show up. I know that maybe sounds corny, but it really works out.
I found it funny when you and I were talking, kind of moving on to the next step, right? So you've set your expectations, and let's say you fall in love with the one. And it was interesting to me talking to you because you were saying about how you can almost tell immediately when your clients have found the one.
Yeah, you kind of can, and maybe it's just me making stuff up, but like, I feel like when I get out of the car, I can see people's body posture change a little bit, and their eyes get a little bit bigger, and they mosey up to the door, and that just, everything is slightly different. I'm not 100% on predicting this, but you could just tell when people are starting to spark. Yeah, sometimes there are false sparks, like we walk up to the door and open it up, and well, that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But you could really tell, like, when people are getting ginned up.
Well, how you can tell? How does the buyer know? Like, what should they be looking for as their internal signs that, yeah, this is it, this is the house?
Depends on, like, that human being, but I think some of it's a slightly faster heart rate. And
the energy,
just some excitement of, like, we've looked at 12 other homes. This is home number 13, and this is far better than the others, and I can actually see this working for me, and maybe not just working, but like being wonderful.
And I can speak for myself. It's like, I get in there and I'm like, I don't care, Paul. You make it work. I don't care what we have to do. You get, you start to have that fear of loss. You start to get really competitive, and you're like, this is the house that I want. I start envisioning, where's my furniture going to go? Who's staying in what rooms? It starts to feel like home immediately. Yeah.
When you start talking about who's going to live where and how you're going to operate in that house and where the Christmas tree might go, that's a good indicator that you're on your way and trying to figure it out.
Cool. All right. So you found the one as a buyer. What's the next step? How do you, I assume since it is emotional, you start wanting to move quickly. What do you recommend at that point? Like, take a breath, or?
No, I generally recommend moving quickly. Like, if you like it, somebody else likes it too. So we tend to act pretty fast in that department, make an offer, all that good stuff. But we call the agent to see if they're working anything to begin with, and then we start looking at how many days on market, how aggressive can we be in our offer, if at all. And we take it from there, start making some smart steps.
Well, that's where you start talking to your clients too, though, about making sure it's a good investment.
Right. Yeah. So as I walk around, as people get a little bit excited, I kind of become the downer at the party, and start talking about things that I figure we'll hear when we resell it a decade from now, 5 years from now, or whenever that is.
Yeah. So you want to protect their assets,
Yeah.
or protect their interests, make sure it's a good decision.
Yeah.
It's also, I think, not only just the house itself, but don't people kind of need to do some due diligence about the neighborhood and that kind of stuff? Like,
absolutely. If we have the time, we'd like to send people. I've sent people door knocking, which actually worked out really well because we discovered that there was a halfway house next door. We don't have anything against halfway houses, but he didn't want to live next door to a halfway house, and he never would have figured that out had he not door knocked. Sometimes we like people to go to HEB. Or whatever grocery store might be in the area, or go out to eat in the area, and just kind of hang out and live in that zone for a little bit.
Yeah, go see what the schools are like. Go back at night, because neighborhoods can have a very different vibe in the evening than they do in the day. I also think, for me, sometimes I fall in love with a house just because I love the way it's styled, right? And so many houses these days are staged professionally by professional stagers and designers, and they're made to look amazing. They're designed to be stunning. And so I think it's important to remind buyers that, you've got to really envision the house empty with your stuff in it. And do you still love it as much, or do you just love the way, because the furniture doesn't come with it normally.
No, it doesn't. The furniture does not come with it, especially if it's a stager's furniture. So you really have to think about, are we able to outfit this in a way that's suitable to us? But yeah, you need to kind of picture the home vacant and empty as you get serious, and think about the flow and like where people will live. I like people, a little game we like to play. I'll just share it right here. Is live your day in the house, but don't take all day. So wake up in the morning and go get your coffee. So you make sure your coffee maker will fit where it goes.
Mentally.
Yeah, mentally. And then go back to your bathroom and get your shower on and all that stuff, and think about where your toothbrush and whatever kind of accoutrements that you might come with. And just go, and how you'd go to work and how you'd come home, and just kind of go through your natural progression of a day. And you'd be surprised at what that uncovers.
Cool. So, okay, we found the house. It's we did all the stuff to get there. We found one. We've checked it out. We're comfortable that this is the one. How do you make it ours? What's the last step? Like, I found it. Now what?
Well, you negotiate your deal, and you either have to win it because it's competitive, or you negotiate it downward because you can. And then you have an inspection is next. We have a whole battery of due diligence stuff we do. We like to prescribe or recommend different things. If it's an older house and I'm concerned about cast iron plumbing or drainage, I might suggest that you have different people come and look at that for you after it's under contract. And then once that's all complete, it really gets turned over to financing. And then from there you close and you own a house. It's really,
and then you celebrate. That's time to pop the champagne and dance on the table.
Yeah, you do a little bit of this, baby.
And there we are, you guys. That's your 8 easy steps to find a house you love. If you want guidance or have questions, I'll give everybody a chance. Drop your questions now if you've got any questions in the chat. Otherwise, you can always reach out to this guy. He knows a lot about real estate.
Yeah, you do too.
You've been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
I'm just a house junkie. So anyway, again, thanks for tuning in and joining us for this 5th episode of Calls with Paul. Next week, we'll be in Disney World, so no Calls with Paul. I just don't think the kids would tolerate us doing this.
No, but it might make it more fun on a roller coaster.
Well, you can do that. I'm not doing that. But we'll see you the week after for Calls with Paul. And then I think we're going to be focusing on sellers and talking about what they can do to help someone fall in love with their home when you're selling it. So thanks, you guys. We're over and out.
Take it easy. You were so good at that.